Colleagues, we are now 4 weeks out from a presidential election in which millions of American voters indicated they wanted a change. Donald Trump, our president-elect, campaigned and elected on a platform he called draining the swamp. Getting rid of entrenched special interests? Sounds good. Fighting on behalf of middle-class Americans? Sounds good. Taking on Wall Street? Powerful special interests? Sounds good. In fact, month after month, our president-elect attacked Secretary Clinton, saying she was too close to the Wall Street banks. He said things like, she will never reform Wall Street. And he said, I know the guys at Goldman Sachs. They have total control, he indicated, over his opponent. Pretty harsh words. So with months of hammering Wall Street and hammering his opponent, it came as a big surprise to many last week when President-elect Trump announced that he would be naming Steve Mnuchin, a darling of Wall Street, a 17-year veteran of Goldman Sachs, a career in the financial industry, to run the Treasury Department, the single most important post in our economy, to be run by Wall Street. Instead of draining the swamp here in Washington, it looks like our president-elect is turning our government, intended to be of, by, and for the people, into government of, by, and for Wall Street. Appointing a 17-year Goldman Sachs executive to oversee financial regulation is the definition of a fox guarding the henhouse. It has the potential to undo all the progress and recovery we have made since shutting down the Wall Street casino, which dragged our country into the Great Recession. And furthermore, wouldn't it be great to have someone at the helm in our economy who fought to put people into homes instead of fighting to kick people out of their homes and into the street, as he has done? One of the great things about America is the resiliency of the American people. They come upon a challenge, sometimes a catastrophe, and they work to put the pieces back together again. And so we've made our way through the Great Depression. We've made it through 2 world wars. We made it through the September 11th terrorist attacks. And we've worked to recover from the Great Recession. That crisis saw 8.7 million jobs lost. Trillions of dollars of lost family wealth. More than 2 million businesses shuttered. A financial crisis that cost about 4 million Americans their homes. Wiped out the hard-earned retirement savings of millions of more families. American people are working to rebuild, but they haven't forgotten. They haven't forgotten the foreclosed homes. They haven't forgotten the lost jobs. They haven't forgotten the retirement savings. They haven't forgotten the shuttered businesses across our great land. And they definitely haven't forgotten the recklessness of Wall Street that made it all happen. But it seems like perhaps our president-elect, Donald Trump, has already forgotten not just the driving force behind the Great Recession of 2008 that caused these calamities for millions of American families and businesses, but that he's also forgot his campaign vow to take on Wall Street. Instead, Mr. Trump is planning to put Wall Street in charge of the Treasury Department. Again, the most powerful economic position in the United States of America. And where does Wall Street stand on these issues? Wall Street hates the provisions that Congress adopted to end predatory lending practices in mortgages and consumer loans. They hate those provisions, and they want to get rid of them. They want to get rid of the watchdog that makes sure that those provisions don't return. And Wall Street hates the provisions that we adopted to shut down the Wall Street casino, where Wall Street firms made huge bets with the deposits of American savers, to terrible consequences. Bloomberg News reported that Trump's nominee, Steve Mnuchin, was front and center during these operations of the Wall Street casino. Have no doubt that he plans to do what he can to restore that casino. Right after his nomination, he promised to strip back parts of Dodd-Frank while being interviewed and went on to suggest that the Volcker Rule, which is the provision that shut down the Wall Street casino, should be weakened or eliminated. So it is not speculation. It's straight from his own testimony to the American public after he was nominated that he wants to restore the Wall Street casino. The Consumer Financial Protection Bureau is another target. That Protection Bureau is a watchdog on the beat against predatory practices, financial practices. You know, it's a pretty good thing when you've got an organization that has returned nearly $12 billion to 27 million American citizens harmed by illegal and predatory practices in the lending business. And furthermore, the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau has saved far more by preventing these practices in the first place on current lending. $12 billion return, but who knows how much they saved consumers on the front end. Maybe it's $50 billion, maybe it's $100 billion, maybe it's more. But the fact is, our citizens are getting a better foundation for financial success. If you believe in the success of American families, you want to block predatory practices designed to undermine them. And that's what we did here in Congress. And that's what's at risk. We did a lot of powerful things to rectify the excesses that led to the disaster of 2008 under the Bush administration. We created stress tests to ensure the strength and security of our largest banks, that they had sufficient reserves to withstand periods of economic challenge. That makes sense. We put procedures in place to unwind mega corporations when they fail so that they can be unwound and not take the rest of the economy, the financial system, down with them. That makes sense. We established a cop on the beat to make sure people aren't scammed by credit card companies. It makes sense. We made sure we had an organization to which people could appeal when they thought there was a predatory practice, to have it rectified and have the funds returned to them if they were right. That makes sense. All of this makes sense. It makes what type of sense? It makes common sense. Aren't these just a common understanding that when a predator damages a family, our entire community suffers? When a family loses its home, our entire community suffers? Don't we understand that when people are thrown out into the street, as Steve Mnuchin's bank specialized in, the family's hurt, the children are deeply hurt? But now we have a nominee who specialized in Wall Street and specialized in foreclosures. Wouldn't it be great, I say again, to have a nominee for our economy, to head our economy, that worked to put people into homes, that worked to make families successful, not someone who specialized in throwing them out of their homes and onto the street. In 2009, in the depths of the financial crisis, Steve Mnuchin purchased IndyMac, the fourth largest failed bank, when it collapsed in July 2008. After buying IndyMac, he renamed it OneWest and took over as the CEO. And under Mnuchin's leadership, OneWest became what housing advocates in California called a foreclosure machine. Why did they call it a foreclosure machine? Because it pushed forward 36,000 homeowners in the midst of the Great Recession into foreclosure, using tactics that were certainly off limits, like robo-signing, fake signing. Let me put it just directly, fake signing of documents. His bank was responsible for more than 1/3 of all reverse mortgage foreclosures, which disproportionately were targeted at America's seniors. Let me tell you the story of Ossie Lofton. Ossie Lofton, a 90-year-old woman from Lakeland, Florida. She took out a reverse mortgage on her home, a type of loan that allows an elderly individual to draw up on the equity of their home to help them meet their basic monthly expenses. You know, the beauty of this is once you have that reverse mortgage, assuming it's not designed with predatory features, it can supply to a senior a steady supply, and they don't have to write a monthly mortgage check to anyone. Instead, they get income to help meet those basic expenses. So it's hard to imagine how you end up in default in this situation. But individuals are still responsible for paying property taxes and homeowners insurance. And in Ossie Lofton's case, there was confusion over her homeowner's insurance coverage. The bank sent her a bill for $423.30. Now, Ossie looked at that, and she thought she had it right. And so she sent the insurance company a check for $423, overlooking the 30-cent payment. Well, they sent her back another bill for 30 cents. Again, she misread it. She thought they were asking for 3 cents, and she mailed them 3 cents, 27 cents shy. Well, what did One West do under Steve Mnuchin's leadership? They foreclosed on Ossie for 27 cents. Now, I have my hand right here, 30 cents, a dime and 4 nickels. Why would a bank foreclose on a woman who owed them a few cents? Why would they do that? Well, if you followed kind of these predatory practices, some banks looked at it this way. They said, if we can find a technicality to grab someone's home, we can resell it for far more than we are owed. That's a huge profit. So for that 27 cents, she lost her home. She and thousands of others lost their homes so this bank could profit rather than working out a mortgage modification. That's really a crime against an American citizen, a specialty of this bank, a specialty through which Steve Mnuchin profited millions and millions of dollars of income based on the suffering inflicted on thousands and thousands of American homeowners. Or we could look at another story. Leslie Park's mom took out a subprime adjustable rate mortgage to pay for repairs. And she faced some hard times and was falling behind, but under very constructive negotiations with One West to stay in the home. You'll recall we had this program, the Home Affordable Mortgage Program, the HAMP program, that a bank could rework it. They were saying to her that we're reworking it, all's good. But meanwhile, they were pursuing foreclosure. And the result was, thinking she was working out a modification, she came back to her home in the middle of a blizzard and found herself locked out. There's an example of the widely publicized two-track policy in which banks would pretend to work out a modification while aggressively pursuing foreclosure. Not a good practice, not fair to the homeowner. Or let's look at another story of Greg and Diane Horowski. They refinanced in 2004 to pay off their original mortgage with a loan from Deutsche Bank and used the rest of the money to cover health care costs. But this was one of those loans with an exploding interest rate, and the loan interest soared to 12.375%. And then Greg Horowski started having health problems, so they were having trouble keeping up with those high interest payments. So they asked the bank to work with them. What bank? One West, to work with them to modify the loan. But the bank turned them down, misled them about how much they owed, lied to them about how much was at stake. And the Horowskis felt betrayed by the misrepresentations, and they took One West to court, and Judge Jeffrey Spinner said the following about the bank's behavior. Which bank? One West, the bank that Steve Mnuchin was heading. He called the bank's behavior, and I quote, harsh, repugnant, shocking, and repulsive. He also added, unequitable, unconscionable, vexatious, and opprobrious. He pretty much summoned every word in the English dictionary to say how wrong the bank's action was as they dealt with this couple. Now, the bank lost that case, but they were aggressive in pursuing everything, so they took it to appeal. They spent a lot of money and had a lot of lawyers take on this couple, and eventually the bank won. They won. No grace, no compromise, no home for this couple. The bank won, and the Hiroskis lost, as did thousands and thousands and thousands of individuals and couples who owned homes that lost them to these very aggressive foreclosure strategies. That's not all. Mr. Mnuchin and his bank didn't just prey on hardworking Americans. They also ran an operation that has a record of discriminating against minority homebuyers and minority neighborhoods. Fair housing advocates have filed a legal complaint after legal complaint against their practices. Here's an example. According to the California Reinvestment Coalition and fair housing advocates in Northern California, the bank's Southern California branches made a total of only 2 mortgage loans to African American homebuyers during 2014 and 2015. That's 1 per year. 2 loans over 24 months in one of the country's most diverse communities. A community that includes Los Angeles, where African Americans make up more than 9% of the population. This practice is known as redlining. It is an egregious practice. What's more, of the 35,877 homes that One West foreclosed on just in California between April 2009 and April 2015, 68% were in majority non-white areas. Looking at this record, it's pretty clear that Mr. Mnuchin has not used his skills in life to put people into homes. He's used his skills to kick people out of their homes and into the street. Instead of fighting for homeowners, he's made a living, the life of a mega multi-millionaire, off the suffering of low-income and middle-income Americans. Our president-elect bashed his opponent for being too cozy with Wall Street banks. He told Iowans, and I quote, "I'm not going to let Wall Street get away with murder." But then he nominates an individual with this record of predatory practices, of private profit over the suffering of thousands of families, to lead our economy in the years ahead. This is just 4 weeks after his election. Just 4 weeks after we heard the cries of he would stand up to Wall Street. He's putting Wall Street in charge. And there's more. He's not appointing just 1, but 2 former Goldman Sachs executives to key positions of power and influence. One is Steve Bannon, assigned to be his chief strategist. That's right, Goldman Sachs chief strategist for our president-elect. And now we have the economist-in-chief, the Treasury Secretary, also coming from the same direction. It sounds like instead of, quote, draining the swamp, our president-elect is helping Wall Street restore the predatory practices that destroyed the living and the lives of millions of American homeowners. This is wrong. And I call on President-elect Trump to reverse course. Fight for government of, by, and for the people, not government of, by, and for Wall Street. Thank you, Madam President.